The disturbing signal. The starship Sovereign drifted quietly through the unknown stretch of space, its engines humming steadily. The crew had been traveling for weeks, navigating the edge of an uncharted galaxy. For the most part, it was peaceful, nothing more than empty space and distant stars. The crew had grown accustomed to the silence, but lately, something felt different. Captain Ethan Walker stood on the bridge, staring out into the void. His hand rested on the edge of the command console, his eyes narrowed in thought. There was a nagging feeling in his gut, a feeling he couldn't shake. It wasn't fear. No, it was more like a warning. Something was out there, something he couldn't see but could sense. "Captain, we're picking up an unusual signal," came the voice of Lieutenant Harper, breaking his thoughts. Ethan turned sharply, his gaze locking on Harper's monitor. She was one of the best officers in the fleet, and if she noticed something out of the ordinary, it meant it was serious. "Unusual how?" Ethan asked, his voice steady, but his curiosity piqued. Harper's fingers flew across the console, tapping commands into the system. "It's a signal we've never encountered before. It's not like anything we've seen in this sector. It's not even human." Ethan stepped closer, his attention fully focused on the display. A series of jagged lines danced across the screen. An alien signal. There were no patterns to it, no logical flow that could be deciphered. It was chaotic, random, but somehow it felt deliberate, as if someone or something was trying to reach them. "Where is it coming from?" Ethan asked, his voice a little sharper now. Harper checked the coordinates. "It's coming from deep within the Orion Nebula. That's several light years away from our current position. But the odd thing is, it's not originating from any known planet or star. It's coming from somewhere within the nebula itself, an empty space." "Empty space?" Ethan repeated. "How is that even possible?" Harper shook her head, clearly puzzled. "That's what doesn't make sense. There's nothing there. No planet, no station, just space. It shouldn't be sending any signals at all." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. Space was vast, and it was filled with mysteries. But this didn't sit right. There was something in that signal, something that tugged at the back of his mind. Humans had an instinct for danger, a sense that was hard to explain. And right now, his instincts were screaming at him. "Bring us closer," Ethan ordered. "I want to see it for myself." The ship's engines hummed louder as the Sovereign changed course, heading toward the source of the mysterious signal. The crew members on the bridge continued their work, but an uneasy tension filled the room. It was as if the Sovereign itself could feel it, the strange presence that was calling them from the depths of space. As they approached the Orion Nebula, the view from the bridge changed. What had once been a sea of stars became a swirling cloud of gas and dust. The nebula stretched across the sky, its colors shifting between deep purples, blues, and fiery reds. It was beautiful, yet unsettling. There was something about the nebula that felt off. Ethan looked at the screen again. The signal was growing stronger, more intense. The random patterns were now merging into something more recognizable, but still indecipherable. The signal seemed to pulse with a rhythm, as though it was alive, reaching out for them. "We're getting closer," Harper said, her voice calm, but with an edge of concern. "The signal is stronger now. It's almost like it's waiting for us." "Stop the ship," Ethan ordered. "Prepare to scan the area. I want to know what we're dealing with." Harper nodded, and the crew went to work, scanning the nebula for any signs of life or activity. The ship's sensors scanned deep into the gas cloud, trying to penetrate the swirling dust that blocked their view. For a few tense moments, there was nothing. Silence. The Sovereign floated in the cold, empty void, surrounded by nothing but the strange, unsettling signal. Then, without warning, the sensors picked up something. "There's an anomaly," Lieutenant Carter, the ship's chief engineer, said, his voice tight with surprise. "It's not large, but it's there. Something is hidden within the nebula, something artificial." Ethan felt his pulse quicken. This was it, the source of the signal. But what could it be? An abandoned station? A derelict ship? Or was it something even more sinister? "Track it," Ethan ordered. "Let's see where it leads." The crew focused on the anomaly, their eyes glued to the monitors. It was faint, barely visible, but the sensors were picking up an unusual energy signature. The closer they got, the more defined it became. The ship's hull trembled slightly as they entered the heart of the nebula, where the gas was thickest. "Captain," Harper said, her voice barely a whisper. "This is strange. The signal's getting louder. But there's something else. Something wrong." Ethan's heart raced. He could feel it now, the presence. It was like a weight in the air, a heaviness that pressed down on his chest. There was no logical reason for it, but something deep inside him told him that this wasn't just a simple signal. It was a warning, a call from something ancient and dangerous. "Prepare for anything," Ethan ordered. "This doesn't feel right. All hands, get ready." As the Sovereign drifted deeper into the nebula, the eerie hum of the signal grew louder, filling every corner of the ship. The crew moved with purpose, ready for whatever was coming. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were not just searching for an answer to the signal. They were walking into something far darker, something that had been waiting for them. And it was only a matter of time before they would find out what that something was. The first encounter. The Sovereign drifted deeper into the Orion Nebula, the swirling clouds of gas and dust growing thicker around them. The eerie hum of the mysterious signal filled the ship, vibrating through the hull like a silent warning. The crew remained tense, their senses on high alert, their every movement slow and deliberate. Something was about to happen, and none of them knew exactly what it would be. Captain Ethan Walker stood in front of the bridge's main console, his eyes glued to the growing energy readings. The signal was stronger now, louder. It was almost as if it was alive, reaching out to them, drawing them in. Ethan's gut told him that they had made a terrible mistake by following it this far. "Captain," Harper said, her voice steady, but with a hint of concern. "We're closing in on the source. I'm picking up more energy signatures. They're fluctuating, but they're not from any known technology." Ethan turned, his brow furrowed. "Not from any known technology." Harper nodded, eyes still locked on her console. "That's right. It's as if the energy is being produced by something ancient. It's not like any system we've encountered. It's organic, alive." Ethan didn't like the sound of that. An ancient organic energy source. That was something beyond anything humanity had dealt with before. There was a part of him, just a small part, that wanted to turn the ship around, to flee and leave the mystery unsolved. But that wasn't who he was. He wasn't about to let fear control him. Not when so much was at stake. "Bring us closer," he said, his voice firm. "We need to know what we're dealing with." The ship's engines hummed as they obeyed the command, slowly pushing forward through the dense gas cloud. The visibility was nearly zero now. Outside, the only thing they could see was a hazy wall of swirling red and purple. It felt like the ship was moving through a living fog, something that didn't want them to get any closer. As the Sovereign continued its advance, a soft beep came from Lieutenant Carter's station. He turned to the captain, his face pale. "Captain, I'm getting something. A massive structure is emerging from the gas. It wasn't there a moment ago." "A structure?" Ethan asked, a knot forming in his stomach. "What kind of structure?" Carter squinted at his display, the tension building. "It's massive, Captain. It's not anything we've ever seen before, almost like a ship. But the shape is wrong. It's jagged organic." Before Ethan could respond, a shudder ran through the ship, and the entire vessel seemed to vibrate. The crew glanced nervously at one another. The hum of the signal, which had been growing in volume, now pulsed in rhythm with the vibration. It was as though the Sovereign itself was being drawn into the heart of something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. "Shields are at full power," Lieutenant Harper reported, her voice calm but her hands shaking slightly as she worked the controls. "We're being pulled toward it. I can't stop it." Ethan's instincts screamed at him to take control, but the ship was too close now. They had to see it for themselves. He couldn't turn back. Not now. Not when they were this close to uncovering what had been hidden in the nebula for centuries. "All hands, brace for impact," he ordered, his voice booming through the ship's intercom. The crew scrambled, securing themselves in their stations, but none could predict what was about to happen. With one final lurch, the Sovereign broke through the thick gas clouds and emerged into a vast, dark space. Before them, hovering in the dead center of the nebula, was a colossal structure, an alien craft that seemed to grow out of the very nebula itself. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, with long, twisting spires that stretched out in every direction, like the tendrils of some ancient creature. The surface of the ship shimmered, as if the hull was alive, pulsating with a strange energy. "Good God," whispered Harper, her voice barely audible. It's alive." Ethan's gaze remained fixed on the alien vessel, his breath caught in his throat. The ship was massive. Too massive to even comprehend. It defied logic. No technology known to humanity could create something like this. It was a living ship, a structure grown from the fabric of space itself, rather than constructed. Before anyone could react, the communication system crackled to life, sending a jolt through the crew. A low, eerie voice echoed through the speakers, speaking in a language no one could understand. It was deep, resonant, and full of power, as if the voice itself was older than the stars. Then, a strange series of symbols appeared on the ship's display. The words were alien, their meaning unclear, but one thing was certain. This wasn't a simple greeting. It felt like a warning to leave, to turn away before it was too late. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. The ship was alive. The signal had been leading them here, to this very moment. And whatever this was, it wasn't just a relic or an abandoned ship. This was something that had been waiting for them, waiting for someone to come close enough to hear its call. "I've never seen anything like this," Lieutenant Harper said, her voice filled with awe and fear. "We need to get out of here, Captain. Whatever this is, it's not friendly." Ethan stood motionless for a moment, his mind racing. The crew was right. Everything about this situation screamed danger, and yet, they were already too far in. They couldn't turn back now. "We can't leave," Ethan said, his voice steady, but the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "We have to learn what it wants." As if to answer his resolve, the ship's lights flickered, and the eerie hum grew louder, a deafening sound that reverberated throughout the Sovereign. Suddenly, the strange symbols on the screen shifted, and a new message appeared. "Leave now or face the consequences." The warning was clear, but it was too late. The Sovereign had already made contact, and now they would face whatever was lurking in the depths of the nebula. Whatever ancient force had called them here. And as the crew braced themselves for what was to come, Ethan could feel it in his bones. This was only the beginning. The hidden power. The Sovereign hovered motionless in the cold vacuum of space, the immense alien structure hanging before them like an ancient giant, looming and silent. The eerie hum that had filled the ship's systems continued, growing louder as though the alien craft itself was alive, breathing in the dark. The crew was on edge, their nerves frayed from the strange energy that seemed to pulse from the structure, calling to them, beckoning them closer. Captain Ethan Walker stood on the bridge, staring at the alien vessel. His thoughts were jumbled. There were so many questions, too many to count. What was this place? What kind of technology, or whatever it was, could create something so unnatural? And what had made it so determined to draw them in? "Captain," Lieutenant Harper said, her voice breaking through his thoughts. "The energy signature is growing stronger. Whatever it is, it's pulling us in. I can't keep the ship still." Ethan turned to her, the unease clear in his eyes. The ship was no longer drifting at their command. It was as if the Sovereign was being guided, drawn into the very heart of the structure against their will. The crew had checked their systems repeatedly. There was no malfunction, no explanation for why the ship seemed to be reacting to the alien vessel. It was as though the Sovereign was responding. "What do you mean, pulling us in?" Ethan asked, his voice a bit more strained now. "We're not in control." Harper's fingers flew across the console, desperately trying to regain control of the ship. "Not exactly. The ship's being guided. It's like some kind of gravitational force or some unknown field. I can't fight it. The ship's too close." Ethan turned to the rest of the crew. The faces in the room were tight with tension. Everyone could feel it. The same sense of impending danger that had settled over them since they first detected the signal. "Can we stop it?" Ethan asked. Harper hesitated, fingers hovering over the controls. "I'm not sure, sir. We can try. But whatever this thing is, it's affecting everything on board." Suddenly, the ship lurched again, a deep, resonating vibration traveling through the Sovereign's frame. The lights flickered, and the hum of the alien signal grew even louder, vibrating through every inch of the ship. The air seemed to grow thick, oppressive. "Captain, we're entering the structure's atmosphere," Lieutenant Carter called from the engineering station. "I don't know how, but we're passing through a boundary. The hull's holding, but I don't know for how long." "We need to prepare for the worst," Ethan said, his voice calm, but the storm of questions inside him raged. What kind of technology was this? What had been left behind in this giant, living ship? And why did it seem to want them so badly? Another violent shudder rocked the Sovereign, and a sudden blast of light appeared through the viewports. The bridge crew staggered slightly as a wave of energy surged around them. A piercing, high-pitched sound filled the air, like metal scraping against metal. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, everything went still. The ship was no longer in the same space it had been moments before. The nebula had vanished from view, and in its place was a vast, sprawling interior. An enormous chamber inside the alien structure, so large it seemed to stretch beyond the limits of their ship's sensors. This is impossible," Harper muttered, eyes wide. "There's no way a space like this could exist inside the ship. It's like a pocket dimension." Ethan didn't respond. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. This wasn't just an alien ship. It wasn't just a structure built by some unknown species. No, this was something more, a vessel of unimaginable power, capable of manipulating space itself. He had no doubt now that they were no longer in the Orion Nebula. They had crossed into another reality, one controlled by the power of this ancient ship. "We need to figure out what's powering this place," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the growing chaos. "There's no way we're just going to sit here. Whatever this thing is, we need to understand it, or we won't make it out." The crew nodded, knowing he was right. As frightening as it was, the only way to survive was to understand what they were dealing with. But every instinct in Ethan told him that the answers they sought might not be ones they wanted to hear. The crew worked quickly, trying to get the systems back online and assess their surroundings. But as they moved, something strange began to happen. The walls of the alien structure, once dark and quiet, started to pulse with light, shifting in time with the hum of the signal. The air seemed to vibrate, and the strange energy continued to seep into the ship. It was almost as if the ship itself was alive and responding to their presence. Then, without warning, a deep rumble filled the ship, a sound so low it rattled their bones. The lights on the bridge flickered, and the communication system came to life once again, crackling with static. A voice, ancient and deep, echoed through the ship. It was neither human nor alien, but something else entirely. The tone was commanding, as though the voice had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. "You have entered the domain of the Keepers." The voice paused, and for a moment, the crew could do nothing but listen, frozen in place. "You seek to understand, but you cannot. This power is not yours to wield. Leave, and you may yet live. Stay, and you will be lost forever." The message ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving a tense silence in its wake. Harper turned to Ethan, her face pale. "Captain, this isn't just a warning. It's a threat." Ethan swallowed hard, his mind racing. They had been led here by the signal, drawn into this impossible place, and now they were being told to leave, or face the consequences. But Ethan knew one thing for certain. There was no turning back now. They were already too deep into this mystery. Whatever was hidden within the alien ship, they had to find it. They had to uncover the truth about the Keepers. "Prepare to move out," he said, his voice firm, though a storm of fear raged in his chest. "We're going to figure out what this ship is, no matter what it takes." And as the crew prepared to venture deeper into the ship, they all felt it, the overwhelming power of the alien vessel pulsing around them like a living, breathing creature. Whatever lay ahead, it would be a trial unlike anything they had ever faced. The Keepers had spoken, and now they would face the consequences of their choice. The Keepers' domain. The Sovereign hummed with an unnatural energy, as if the very air around the crew had shifted. The sudden silence following the deep, ancient voice of the Keepers seemed to hang in the atmosphere, as thick and suffocating as the strange energy now coursing through the ship. The crew stood frozen in place, every pair of eyes on Captain Ethan Walker, as if waiting for him to make the decision that would determine their fate. Ethan's mind raced. The Keeper's warning was clear. They were in a place beyond human comprehension, in a domain that was not their own. Yet they couldn't just leave, not when so much was at stake. They had come here for answers, answers about the mysterious signal, answers about the unknown alien craft, answers that could change the very course of human history. He took a slow breath, his gaze scanning the crew's tense faces. "We're not going anywhere," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "The Keepers want us to leave, but we need to understand this place. We need to find out what they're guarding and why they brought us here." Harper nodded, though her eyes were wide with fear. "Captain, I've never seen anything like this. If we move forward, there's no telling what we'll encounter." "I know," Ethan replied, his voice firm. "But if we leave now, we'll never know what we found. We owe it to humanity to uncover the truth." The crew murmured in agreement, but there was no mistaking the anxiety in their eyes. They had been drawn into something far bigger than any of them had anticipated. But there was no turning back now. "Move out," Ethan commanded. "We're going to explore the interior. Harper, Carter, you're with me. The rest of you, secure the ship and stay in contact. If anything goes wrong, we need to know." The team made their way to the airlock, a nervous energy pulsing through them as they donned their suits and prepared for the unknown. The Sovereign remained eerily still, suspended in the heart of the alien structure. It felt almost as though the ship itself was waiting, biding its time, aware of their every move. The walls of the craft shifted in rhythm with the pulse of energy that continued to reverberate throughout the ship. The faint, flickering light from outside cast eerie shadows on the walls, giving the impression of motion even though there was none. Once outside the Sovereign, the crew ventured into the massive hollow chamber that lay before them. The walls of the alien structure were covered in strange symbols, their meanings indecipherable, their forms shifting in the dim light. It was as if the very surface of the ship was alive, moving, breathing. Ethan reached out and touched the wall. It was smooth, cold to the touch, but the moment his hand made contact, a low hum resonated through the structure, as if it were aware of their presence. "Captain," Carter said in a hushed voice, "I'm picking up something. It's faint, but it's there." Ethan looked at him, his heart pounding in his chest. "What is it?" "Energy, a massive concentration of it. I think it's coming from deeper inside." Without hesitation, Ethan gestured for the team to move forward. They pressed on through the labyrinth of twisting corridors, the walls seeming to shift and change around them. It felt as if the very structure was alive, guiding them toward some unknown destination. The deeper they went, the more the air seemed to grow thick, almost charged, as if it were filled with static. Their suits barely masked the tension that buzzed in the air. Then, without warning, the corridor opened into a vast chamber, far larger than anything they had seen before. It was filled with towering alien machines, each one emitting a strange rhythmic pulse. The machines were unlike anything they had encountered in their travels, organic yet mechanical, alien yet familiar, as though they were a blend of technology and biology. Ethan took a cautious step forward, his boots making a soft echo in the otherwise silent room. The hum of the machines grew louder, the sound vibrating through the floor beneath his feet. "Harper, what do you think?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "These machines, they look like they're waiting for something, like they've been here for a long time." Ethan studied the machines. They were dormant, their strange lights flickering but not fully activating. Whatever power they contained, it was sealed away, dormant but still potent. He moved toward the central machine, the largest of them all, its massive form dwarfing anything the crew had ever seen. It was covered in the same strange symbols as the walls of the ship, and at its core was a pulsating, glowing orb, a source of energy unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. As they approached, the voice of the keepers echoed through the ship once more, deep and resonant, as if it were coming from the very walls themselves. "You are not meant to interfere. The power you seek is beyond your comprehension. Leave now, or face the consequences." The voice seemed to echo in their minds, chilling them to their core. But Ethan didn't flinch. He couldn't. They were too close now. The answers lay in this room, in the heart of the alien technology. He had to push forward. "We can't leave now," Ethan muttered to himself, more to reassure himself than anyone else. "We need to understand this power. We need to understand the keepers." Harper and Carter exchanged nervous glances, but they followed Ethan as he continued forward. They'd reached the central machine, and the glowing orb at its core pulsed with an eerie light. It was both beautiful and terrifying at the same time, as though it held the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe, or perhaps to unleashing something far more dangerous. Ethan reached out, his hand trembling as he moved closer to the orb. His fingers brushed against the surface of the glowing energy, and a surge of power rushed through him. It was as though the ship itself recognized his touch. The lights flickered, and the hum of the ship grew louder, reverberating through his bones. And then, just as quickly as it had started, everything stopped. A deep, resonating voice filled the chamber, far louder and more powerful than before. "You are not ready." Suddenly, the room shook violently. The machines around them began to glow with an intense, blinding light. The walls trembled, and Ethan had to brace himself against the power of the energy surge. The ship was coming alive around them. "Get back," Harper shouted, but it was too late. The orb had activated, and the entire structure seemed to respond. A swirling vortex of energy surrounded the crew, pulling them into the heart of the unknown. The revelation, the violent shake of the room sent the crew tumbling to the floor. The blinding light from the glowing orb intensified, consuming everything around them. Ethan had to close his eyes to shield himself from the overwhelming brilliance. The vibrations in the air felt like thunderclaps, reverberating deep in his chest, as if the entire structure was alive and reacting to their presence. "Hold on," Ethan shouted, struggling to regain his footing. His voice barely carried over the deafening hum that now filled the chamber. Harper, Carter, and the rest of the crew scrambled to keep their balance, their movements frantic as the walls and floor seemed to tremble under the surge of unknown power. And then, as abruptly as it had started, the chaos stopped. The light dimmed, the hum faded to a soft, almost imperceptible vibration, and the room returned to an eerie silence. The air felt charged, still heavy with the energy that had surged through the ship moments before. Ethan slowly opened his eyes, blinking as his vision adjusted to the faint glow that now permeated the chamber. The central orb remained, its pulsating glow softer now, almost inviting. Harper was the first to speak, her voice trembling. "What just happened? What was that?" Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow, his pulse still racing. "I don't know, but I think we've triggered something." Carter stood up, dusting himself off, his face pale. "Triggered it. That thing nearly killed us." "It didn't kill us," Ethan replied, scanning the chamber. "It's testing us. We're not supposed to be here. That's what it's trying to tell us." "Testing," Harper repeated incredulously. "Why would it test us? We're just a crew of humans." Ethan turned toward the central machine once more. The glowing orb seemed to beckon him forward, pulsing with the same strange energy that had just nearly destroyed them. It was both mesmerizing and terrifying, as though it held all the answers, and perhaps even more dangers. "We've been drawn here for a reason," Ethan said, more to himself than anyone else. "That voice, the Keepers, whatever they are, they warned us. But this is bigger than just a warning. This is a message." He took a hesitant step forward, his boots making a soft echo on the chamber's floor. Harper and Carter exchanged uncertain glances, but followed him, their steps cautious. "What are you thinking?" Harper asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "I think we need to understand this technology. If we leave now, we'll never know what it can do. And we'll never know what the Keepers want. They didn't bring us here for no reason." There was a pause as everyone considered his words. The weight of the situation had grown heavier with each passing second. Yet the unknown call to understand, to uncover the truth, pulled at them all. They had come this far. Ethan reached the central orb and carefully placed his hand on the surface. This time, the reaction was different. The orb didn't pulse with dangerous force. Instead, it hummed gently, a soft vibration that seemed to resonate with the crew's very souls. Then, unexpectedly, the walls around them began to shift. Strange symbols they had seen etched into the walls of the ship, glowed with the same eerie light that now surrounded them. The floor beneath their feet seemed to ripple like water, and the very space around them seemed to warp and bend, as if the laws of physics themselves were being altered. "What's happening?" Carter shouted, his voice filled with panic. Ethan stood frozen, his hand still resting on the orb. "It's opening something. It's showing us something." As the orb pulsed again, the air around them seemed to shimmer, and suddenly, the walls of the chamber disappeared. They were no longer in the alien ship, surrounded by strange machines. Instead, they were standing on the edge of a vast, desolate landscape, an empty, lifeless world. The sky above was a deep shade of purple, streaked with strange glowing clouds that flickered like dying embers. In the distance, a massive city stood, its architecture unlike anything human eyes had ever seen, towering spires that seemed to pierce the very sky. Yet, the city was silent. Not a sound could be heard. The entire place appeared abandoned, frozen in time. "What is this?" Harper whispered, her voice filled with awe and fear. Ethan scanned the landscape, his mind racing. This wasn't a dream. It wasn't a hallucination. They were seeing a piece of history, a piece of the past that had been hidden from them, perhaps for eons. "This is what the Keepers wanted us to see," he muttered. "This is their home." The vision before them began to shift, showing images of the city, of its once thriving inhabitants. The beings that populated this place were unlike anything the crew had ever seen. Tall, imposing figures with shimmering, almost translucent skin. Their eyes glowed with a strange light, and their movements were graceful, almost unnatural. "They're not human," Carter observed, his voice filled with a mix of awe and fear. "No," Ethan agreed, his eyes locked on the vision. "There's something else, something ancient." The images flashed faster, showing the rise and fall of this civilization. The aliens had created wonders beyond human comprehension, wielding technology and power that had allowed them to shape entire worlds. But then, something had gone wrong. The once great city had been destroyed, left in ruins, its inhabitants scattered, their great knowledge lost. And then the vision shifted again, showing an enormous ship, one that was eerily similar to the one they had boarded. It was massive, its dark hull gleaming with alien energy. The ship was not just a vessel. It was a monument, an artifact, a symbol of the alien race's greatest power. But there was one key difference. The ship was surrounded by a glowing barrier, as though it was being sealed off from the rest of the universe. "This is it," Ethan said, his voice barely a whisper. "The Keepers, they're guarding something. They're protecting this power." Before the crew could process this new revelation, the vision began to fade, and the landscape around them blurred. The chamber, the orb, the alien machines, all of it disappeared. They were back in the heart of the alien vessel once more. But now, they understood. The Keepers weren't just protectors. They were guardians of something ancient, something powerful, hidden away for reasons they had yet to understand. And now, Ethan knew one thing for certain. They weren't just exploring an alien ship anymore. They were standing on the precipice of a galactic mystery, one that could change everything they knew about the universe and about themselves. The awakening of the Guardian. The ship trembled again, this time with an intensity that sent shockwaves through the crew. The deep rumble was unlike anything they had experienced before, a low growl that seemed to come from deep within the very bones of the vessel. It was a call, a warning, or perhaps something more. Ethan staggered slightly as the floor beneath him pulsed with energy, and a deep voice, so powerful that it felt like a physical presence, boomed throughout the chamber. It wasn't the voice of the Keepers this time, nor was it the quiet hum of the alien machines. This voice was different. It was more direct, more primal. "You have touched the heart of the Guardian. The trial is set." Ethan's heart raced as he tried to comprehend the meaning of the words. The heart of the Guardian? What did that even mean? He glanced over at Harper and Carter, who both wore expressions of confusion and growing fear. They too felt the magnitude of the moment. They had unknowingly awakened something, something old and powerful. "We didn't do this," Harper said, her voice cracking under the weight of the revelation. "We didn't choose this." "Doesn't matter now," Ethan replied, his voice steady, though the unease crept into his thoughts. "It's awake now. We can't go back. We need to finish this." Carter took a step forward, his eyes scanning the room, now more intense and filled with a sense of urgency. "We need to be ready. If we triggered something, it could be dangerous." Ethan didn't respond at first. He knew Carter was right. They had awakened something ancient, but what had it been guarding? What was its purpose? Suddenly, a sharp mechanical click echoed through the room, followed by the deep hum of the machinery starting to activate. The walls of the chamber began to glow with a blinding light, and the entire structure seemed to come alive, reacting to the presence of the crew. Ethan took a step back, instinctively reaching for his blaster, but there was no need. Whatever was awakening in the ship wasn't an immediate threat. Not yet. Without warning, the floor beneath them split open, revealing a massive, circular chamber below. It was filled with intricate mechanisms, gears, and a glowing blue core that seemed to pulse in perfect synchronization with the heartbeat of the ship. A thick mist swirled in the air, and out of it, figures began to emerge. The figures were not human. They were tall, their forms translucent and ethereal, their glowing eyes focused on the crew with an intensity that sent chills down their spines. They looked like ancient guardians, their very presence exuding an aura of power and knowledge. The largest figure stepped forward, its presence commanding and overwhelming. Its eyes glowed with a fierce blue light as it locked its gaze on Ethan. It spoke, but its words were not in any language the crew could understand. Instead, the sound seemed to resonate directly in their minds, as though the very thoughts of the being were being transmitted into their consciousness. "The trial has begun. You will face the reckoning. Only those worthy will survive. Ethan took a deep breath, the weight of the words crashing over him. This was it. The keepers had warned them. And now, the guardians had made their intentions clear. They were not just protectors of an ancient power. They were testing the crew. They were challenging humanity to prove its worth. Harper looked to Ethan, her face pale. What do we do? Ethan's mind raced. He knew they couldn't turn back now. They had come too far. They had triggered the trial, and there was no escaping it. If they were to survive, they would need to prove themselves worthy. We face it head-on, Ethan said, his voice filled with determination. We have no choice. The glowing figure raised its arm, and the air around them thickened with energy. A massive force field materialized around the crew, trapping them within a barrier of pulsating light. Ethan instinctively stepped back, his hand tightening around his weapon. The reckoning will test you. Only the worthy will pass. Before anyone could react, the force field shimmered, and the chamber began to transform around them. The walls shifted, twisting and contorting as the very environment changed. In the blink of an eye, the crew found themselves standing on the edge of a vast, alien landscape, one that stretched out before them like a hostile world waiting to be conquered. The ground was uneven, cracked, and covered with jagged stones. Above them, the sky was dark, swirling with storm clouds that seemed to pulse with unnatural energy. The air was thick with tension, as if the very atmosphere was charged with danger. In the distance, they could see strange structures, massive towers that loomed over the horizon, surrounded by twisted alien plants that seemed to be alive. This is part of the trial, Ethan muttered. Whatever this place is, it's testing us. We need to survive. And we need to find a way out. Carter pulled out his weapon, scanning the environment. This doesn't look like anything we've ever seen before. It's not just a test of survival. This place is alive. Ethan nodded grimly. Whatever's behind this, we have to be prepared. The trial won't be easy. We'll face whatever comes at us. But together, we have a chance. As they began to move forward, the ground trembled again, but this time, the danger wasn't in the form of energy surges or strange alien warnings. This time, it was something more direct. Out of the dark, swirling mists ahead, figures began to emerge. Not just one or two, but dozens. Alien creatures, their bodies twisted and monstrous, their eyes glowing with the same unsettling light as the guardians they had encountered. They were coming for them. Get ready, Ethan shouted as he raised his weapon, the crew preparing for the coming onslaught. The trial had begun, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The crew had no choice but to fight their way through this alien nightmare, facing dangers that not only tested their physical abilities, but their very will to survive. If they were to escape this trial with their lives, and their humanity intact, they would have to prove that they were worthy. But little did they know, this was just the beginning. The real test was still to come. The heart of the trial. The creatures emerged from the swirling mist like shadows from a nightmare, their glowing eyes fixated on the crew. They were massive, towering over the humans, their grotesque forms seeming to distort the very air around them. Their bodies were made of dark, pulsating material that seemed to shimmer and shift, their movements unnaturally smooth, as if they were not entirely bound by the laws of nature. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he raised his weapon, the energy shield humming at full power. The crew had no choice but to fight. The trial wasn't just a test of survival. It was a battle for their very lives. Take them down, Ethan shouted, his voice cutting through the thick atmosphere. The creatures didn't respond with words, only with vicious, primal growls. They lunged at the crew with frightening speed, their claws extending like blades, aimed directly at the humans. Harper fired first, her blaster discharging a pulse of energy that struck one of the creatures in the chest. It recoiled, but the blast didn't seem to faze it much. Its body shimmered and repaired itself almost instantly. Shoot for the head, Carter yelled, firing his own weapon. The energy blast hit the creature square in the face. But again, it barely slowed down. "It's not working," Harper said, panic rising in her voice. Ethan's mind raced as the creatures continued their relentless assault. The odds were stacked against them, and the creatures seemed to be getting closer with each passing moment. These weren't just mindless beasts. They were designed for combat, their bodies enhanced by alien technology that made them nearly invincible. Ethan's eyes darted around the environment. The force field still surrounded them, but it was beginning to flicker, weakening under the pressure of the ongoing battle. The air around them crackled with energy, as if the very ship itself was watching, waiting for them to prove their worth. He had to act quickly. "Harper, Carter, we need to move," Ethan ordered. "Head for the center of the battlefield. If we don't do something soon, we'll be overwhelmed." Harper nodded grimly, her breath quick and shallow. The creatures were closing in, but there was no choice now. They were in the heart of the trial, and their survival depended on them outsmarting their enemies. She ran forward, her blaster firing non-stop, as she fought to carve a path through the chaos. Carter followed, covering their backs. The creatures were relentless, but he was determined not to let them win. "We can't hold them off forever." "What's the plan, Ethan?" Ethan was already calculating their next move, his mind working faster than ever. The only thing that seemed to be working was the energy field surrounding them, the faint hum of power still vibrating through the air. He took a deep breath, knowing they had only one shot. "We need to destroy the central core," he said. "The core controls the field. If we can disable it, we'll have a chance to get out of here alive." Harper and Carter both turned to him, eyes wide with disbelief. "How do you know that?" Harper asked, dodging another attack from a monstrous creature that lunged at her. "I don't," Ethan admitted, "but it's our only option. We take out the core, and everything stops." They fought their way through the battlefield, the air thick with dust and the scent of burning energy. The creatures were growing more aggressive, and the crew was beginning to tire. But Ethan kept his focus, his eyes fixed on the distant energy core in the center of the arena. It was surrounded by towering spires of glowing metal and dark stone, an almost impossibly complex array of alien technology. The core pulsed with the same energy that had activated the trial, the same energy that had been flowing through the ship since the crew had first stepped foot inside. "This is it," Ethan said, his voice low. "We get to the core. We end this." Harper and Carter nodded in unison, determination flashing in their eyes. The creatures, sensing their resolve, redoubled their attacks, but the humans pressed forward, using everything they had to stay alive and move toward their goal. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they'd reached the center of the chamber. The core was huge, a massive orb of glowing energy surrounded by intricate alien machinery. Its pulse was rhythmic, steady, but growing stronger, almost as if it was alive. The hum of power vibrated through the air, the very walls of the chamber shuddering under its force. Ethan knelt before the core, scanning the alien technology. It was like nothing he had ever seen before, far beyond the capabilities of human science. The core seemed to be feeding off the energy of the trial, and the more it pulsed, the more dangerous the creatures became. "There's got to be a way to shut it down," Ethan muttered. His fingers danced over the alien controls, trying to make sense of the symbols and patterns. There was no instruction manual for this. "Do you see anything?" Harper called out, firing at a creature that had managed to get too close. "I'm trying." Ethan snapped back, his frustration mounting. The creatures were closing in fast, their massive claws reaching out for him. Just as it seemed like all hope was lost, Ethan's hand found a switch, a lever hidden beneath a panel of alien symbols. Without hesitation, he pulled it. A loud, resonating hum echoed through the chamber, followed by a blinding flash of light. The creatures froze. The air seemed to stand still, the tension in the atmosphere releasing like a pressure valve. The force field around them flickered once more and then vanished, leaving only silence in its wake. The creatures, once fierce and unstoppable, collapsed, their bodies flickering out of existence as if they had never been there. The trial had ended. The galaxy had watched, and humanity had survived. But there was no time to celebrate. The ship was still alive, its purpose still unclear. Ethan knew that this was only one part of something much bigger. The trial had been a test of strength, but the real journey was just beginning. Harper and Carter slowly approached Ethan, who stood motionless in front of the now-dormant core. The creatures were gone, but the ship still pulsed with energy, and the air hummed with a strange, unearthly power. "What now?" Carter asked, his voice quiet, almost reverent. Ethan took a long breath, his mind still racing with the implications of what they had just done. "We find out what the Keepers were guarding. We finish what we started." The crew turned to face the horizon, the alien landscape stretching out before them. The trial was over, but the true adventure had just begun. And with the galaxy's future hanging in the balance, Ethan knew that humanity's place in the universe was about to be forever changed.